Have you ever been called useless by someone who desperately needed your help? Maya Rodriguez never imagined that an old Mexican lullaby from her grandmother would become the key to changing her life forever. What started as the worst day of her job as a nanny in Beverly Hills turned into a moment that would expose family secrets, heal broken hearts, and prove that sometimes the most powerful magic comes from the love we carry in our memories. The morning sun filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the Thompson mansion in Beverly Hills, casting long shadows across the marble floors. Maya Rodriguez adjusted her uniform for the third time that morning, her hands trembling slightly as she prepared herself for another day of caring for 3-year-old twins Emma and Ethan Thompson. At 26, Maya had been working as their nanny for 8 months, and every single day felt like walking through a minefield. Richard Thompson, their father, was a successful tech executive who treated everyone around him like disposable employees, including Maya. His wife, Catherine, had left 6 months ago, unable to cope with his demanding nature and constant criticism, leaving him to raise the twins alone with Maya's help. The twins were beautiful children with golden curls and bright blue eyes, but they were also deeply troubled. Emma would have panic attacks that lasted hours, while Ethan would go into violent tantrums, throwing toys and screaming until his face turned red. Neither child had spoken their first words yet. Despite being well past the developmental milestone, and Maya suspected it was because of the constant tension in their home. Richard stormed into the living room that Tuesday morning, his expensive suit wrinkled and his hair dishevelled from another sleepless night. "Maya, where are my children?" he barked without even looking at her. The board meeting got moved up, and I need them quiet today, no exceptions. Before Maya could respond, Emma started crying from her high chair where she was supposed to be eating breakfast. The sound triggered Ethan, who immediately began wailing at the top of his lungs. Maya rushed over, trying to calm them both, but their cries only intensified, echoing through the large, empty house. "What did you do to them?" Richard shouted over the noise, his face flushing red with anger. "I pay you good money to keep them under control, and this is what I get." Maya tried explaining that the children were likely reacting to his raised voice and the stress in the house. But Richard wasn't listening. He paced back and forth, running his hands through his hair as his phone buzzed incessantly with work calls. For the next 2 hours, Maya tried everything she could think of. She offered the twins their favourite snacks, played their usual cartoons, tried engaging them in games, and even took them to their playroom, hoping a change of scenery would help. Nothing worked. Emma's crying had turned into hyperventilating, while Ethan had thrown himself on the floor, kicking and screaming. Richard's patience finally snapped when his assistant called to remind him about the board presentation he still hadn't finished preparing. "This is ridiculous," he yelled, storming back into the living room where Maya was holding both crying children. "You're supposed to be a professional. You're useless, Maya. Absolutely useless. If you can't handle 2 children, maybe you should find another job." The words hit Maya like a physical blow. She had dedicated months of her life to these children, waking up at 5 in the morning, staying late when Richard had business dinners, and even coming in on weekends when he travelled. She had watched Emma take her first steps and helped Ethan learn to use a spoon. She had been more of a parent to them than either of their actual parents. And yet here she was being called useless. Maya felt tears forming in her eyes, but she refused to let Richard see her cry. Instead, she closed her eyes and took a deep breath, trying to center herself the way her grandmother had taught her when she was young. That's when she remembered the lullaby Abuela Rosa used to sing when Maya couldn't sleep as a child. Without really thinking about it, Maya began to hum the melody softly. Duérmete mi niño, duérmete mi amor, duérmete pedazo de mi corazón. The words came naturally in Spanish, flowing from a place deep in her memory, where her grandmother's voice still lived. The effect was immediate. Emma's crying began to soften, and Ethan stopped thrashing on the floor. Both children turned to look at Maya with wide, curious eyes, as if they had never heard anything so beautiful in their lives. Maya continued, singing the gentle melody about sleeping peacefully and being loved completely. Within minutes, both children were calm. Emma had stopped hyperventilating and was breathing normally, while Ethan had crawled over to Maya and was leaning against her leg. Maya kept singing the lullaby over and over, her voice growing more confident as she watched the tension leave the children's small bodies. Richard stood frozen in the doorway, his mouth slightly open as he watched his children transform from inconsolable to peaceful in a matter of minutes. Maya finished the lullaby, and both Emma and Ethan were fast asleep, Emma in her high chair, and Ethan curled up on the carpet. The silence that followed was deafening. Richard stared at Maya as if seeing her for the first time. "What just happened?" he whispered, his earlier anger completely forgotten. "How did you do that?" Maya gently lifted Ethan from the floor and carried him to the couch, then carefully moved Emma from her high chair to lie beside her brother. "It's a lullaby my grandmother taught me," she said quietly. "She used to say that love travels through music better than through words." Richard watched his children sleep peacefully for the first time in weeks. Their faces were relaxed and Emma's breathing was steady and calm. "They haven't slept like this since." He paused, unable to finish the sentence. "Since their mother left," Maya finished gently. Richard nodded, his tough executive facade cracking slightly. "I don't know how to help them, Maya. I try everything, but I just make things worse. Every time I walk in the room, they start crying, and I end up yelling, which makes everything worse. I feel like I'm failing them every single day." For the first time since Maya had started working for the Thompson family, she saw Richard not as an arrogant boss, but as a broken father who was desperately trying to hold his family together. Maya looked at the sleeping twins and made a decision that would change everything. "Let me teach you the lullaby," she said softly. "Maybe if they hear it from you, it will help them feel safe again." The next morning, Maya arrived at the Thompson house to find Richard already awake and dressed, but sitting quietly at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee instead of rushing around barking orders like usual. When he saw Maya, he actually stood up and nodded respectfully. "Good morning, Maya. I wanted to apologize for yesterday. I was completely out of line calling you useless. You're anything but useless, and I'm grateful for everything you do for Emma and Ethan." Maya was so surprised by the apology that she almost dropped her purse. "Thank you, Mr. Thompson. I appreciate that." "Please call me Richard," he said, running a hand through his hair. "I've been thinking all night about what happened yesterday with the lullaby. Would you really be willing to teach it to me?" Before Maya could answer, the sound of Emma crying drifted down from upstairs. Richard's shoulders tensed automatically, and Maya could see him preparing to react with frustration. "Let's go together," Maya suggested. "You can learn by watching first." They climbed the curved staircase to the twins' nursery, where Emma was standing in her crib, tears streaming down her face, while Ethan sat in his crib staring blankly at the wall. Richard started forward, but Maya gently touched his arm. "Let me show you something first. Watch how I approach them." Maya walked slowly to Emma's crib, speaking in a soft, gentle voice. Buenos dias, Emma, mi amor. Did you have a good sleep? She didn't pick Emma up immediately. Instead, she sat in the rocking chair between the two cribs, began humming the lullaby. Emma's crying slowed as she listened to the familiar melody, and Ethan turned his head toward Maya. With interest, Maya continued humming while making eye contact with both children, letting them know she was present and calm. Only after they had both settled did she stand up and lift Emma from her crib. The key is staying calm yourself, Maya explained to Richard as she changed Emma's diaper. Children can feel our emotions even when we try to hide them. If we're stressed, they get stressed. If we're peaceful, they can find peace too. Richard watched carefully as Maya moved through the morning routine with both children. She spoke to them, constantly explaining what she was doing and asking them questions, even though they couldn't answer yet. Emma, we're going to change your diaper now and then. We'll go have some breakfast with Daddy Ethan. Would you like to help pick out Emma's clothes today? Do they understand what you're saying? Richard asked. More than you might think, Maya replied. But even if they don't understand the words, they understand the tone and the attention children need to feel seen and heard, just like adults do. As they went downstairs for breakfast, Richard attempted to follow Maya's lead. He spoke more gently to the twins, and when Emma started getting fussy, instead of raising his voice, he looked to Maya for guidance. Try humming the melody, Maya suggested. You don't have to sing the words, yet just the tune. Richard felt self-conscious, but he began humming off-key. Emma looked up at him with surprise and curiosity. Richard's humming was rough and uncertain, but there was something about hearing the melody from her father that made Emma reach out toward him. Maya guided Richard's hands as he picked up his daughter and continued humming. For the first time in months, Emma didn't cry when her father held her instead. She looked up at his face with wide eyes, as if trying to figure out this new gentle version of the man who usually shouted. Maya felt a warmth spread through her chest as she watched father and daughter connect. The lullaby is called Duérmete, mi niño, Maya explained as Richard continued holding Emma. It's about a parent's love being so strong that it can protect a child even in their dreams. My grandmother sang it to my mother, and my mother sang it to me. It's been in our family for generations. What do the words mean? Richard asked, genuinely curious. Maya translated softly. Sleep, my child, sleep, my love, sleep, little piece of my heart. That's the first line. It goes on to talk about how the parent will always watch over the child and keep them safe no matter what happens. Richard was quiet for a long moment, still holding Emma, who had fallen back asleep in his arms. Catherine used to sing to them, he said finally. Not in Spanish, but she would make up little songs. When she left, she said I had turned our home into a place where music couldn't survive. Maya saw the pain in Richard's eyes and understood that his anger and harsh behavior came from his own hurt. Music can survive anywhere, Maya said gently. It just needs someone willing to make it. Over the next several days, Maya worked with Richard to teach him not just the lullaby, but a completely different way of interacting with his children. She showed him how to read their signals. When Emma twisted her hands, it meant she was getting overwhelmed. When Ethan went very quiet, it meant he was about to have a meltdown. Richard was a quick learner, and Maya could see that underneath his tough exterior was a father who genuinely loved his children. He had just forgotten how to show it in a way they could understand. The corporate world had taught him that emotion was weakness and control was strength. But children needed the opposite. They needed vulnerability and flexibility. Maya also shared more about her own background, explaining how she had grown up in a bilingual household in East Los Angeles, where her grandmother had been the emotional center of the family. Abuela Rosa always said that children are like plants, Maya told Richard one afternoon as they watched the twins play peacefully in their sandbox. They need different things at different times, sometimes water, sometimes sunshine, sometimes just quiet attention. I never learned that growing up, Richard admitted. My father was a military man. Everything was discipline and structure. There wasn't room for gentleness. It's never too late to learn, Maya assured him. Emma and Ethan are teaching you just like they're teaching me. Every day is a chance to try again. By the end of the week, Richard could sing the entire lullaby in Spanish, though his pronunciation was still rough. The twins had begun responding to his voice differently. Emma would reach for him when she woke up from naps, and Ethan had started bringing Richard toys instead of throwing them Maya. Watched these small changes with growing hope, knowing that healing was happening not just for the children, but for their father too. The breakthrough came on Friday evening when Richard called Maya in a panic. Emma fell and scraped her knee, and I can't get her to stop crying. I've tried everything you taught me, but nothing's working. Can you come? Over. When Maya arrived, she found Richard sitting on the living room floor with Emma in his lap, both of them crying. Richard was singing the lullaby through his tears, his voice shaky but determined. Emma was still sobbing, but she was clinging to her father instead of pushing him away. Maya knelt down beside them and added her voice to Richard's, creating a harmony that filled the room. Ethan, who had been hiding behind the couch, came out and sat next to them. The four of them sat together on the floor singing the fall. Ancient lullaby until both children were calm and sleepy. You did everything right, Maya told Richard as they tucked the twins into their beds. You stayed with her. You sang to her. You let her feel your love. That's what she needed most. Richard looked at Maya with gratitude and something else she couldn't quite identify. Maya, I need to tell you something. Catherine didn't just leave because of my behaviour. She left because she couldn't handle how children reminded her of her own childhood trauma. She couldn't bear their crying because it triggered memories she hadn't dealt with. I was angry at her for abandoning them, but I was also angry at myself for not being enough to make her stay. Maya understood then that Richard's harsh behaviour had been his way of trying to control a situation that felt completely out of control. The children's crying triggers you too, doesn't it? Maya said gently. It reminds you that you couldn't protect your family from falling apart. Richard nodded, tears in his eyes. I thought if I could just make them stop crying, if I could just fix the problem, then maybe Catherine would come back. Maybe we could be a real family again. But instead, I was pushing everyone away, including my own children. Maya placed a gentle hand on Richard's shoulder. Healing isn't about stopping the crying, Richard. It's about creating a safe space where crying is okay, where emotions are welcome. Children need to know that their feelings won't break us or drive us away. As Maya prepared to leave that evening, Richard stopped her at the door. Maya, I want you to know that you've saved my family. You've shown me how to be a father to my children, and I will never forget that whatever happens, want to make sure Emma and Ethan always have access to their culture, to Spanish, to the lullabies that bring them peace. Would you be willing to teach them more about their Mexican heritage through you? Maya felt tears in her own eyes, knowing that this was more than just a job anymore. It was a calling. 3 weeks after the lullaby breakthrough, Maya arrived at the Thompson house to find Richard waiting for her with an unusual request. "Maya, I've been thinking about what you said about the children needing to know about different cultures. I want to learn more about your family's traditions. Would you be willing to teach me some Spanish and maybe share more songs that Emma and Ethan could grow up with?" Maya was touched by Richard's genuine interest in expanding his children's world. "I'd be happy to, Richard. My grandmother had a whole collection of songs for different occasions. Lullabies for sleep, songs for healing, songs for celebration." Over the following days, Maya began incorporating more Spanish into the children's daily routine. She would count to 10 in both languages during playtime, sing simple songs during bath time, and tell traditional Mexican folk stories. During quiet moments, the twins responded beautifully to the rich sounds of Spanish, and Maya noticed that their emotional regulation continued to improve. Emma had started babbling in what sounded like a mixture of English and Spanish, while Ethan had begun dancing whenever Maya sang songs with upbeat rhythms. Both children were sleeping better, eating better, and most importantly, they were laughing more. The mansion that had once felt cold and sterile was beginning to feel like a real home. Richard was making remarkable progress too. He had learned to recognize the early signs of the children's distress and respond with patience instead of panic. He practiced Spanish phrases during his commute to work and had even started playing traditional Mexican music during breakfast. Maya often caught him humming melodies she had taught him, and it filled her heart with warmth. But it was during a particularly difficult day that Maya realized how much deeper their connection had become. Emma had spiked a fever during the night and was inconsolable despite Richard's best efforts when Maya arrived that morning. She found Richard exhausted and worried, sitting in the rocking chair with Emma pressed against his chest while he sang the lullaby over and over. "I've been up all night," Richard said, his voice hoarse from singing. "She won't let me put her down, and she keeps crying, but differently than usual. I'm scared, Maya. What if something's really wrong?" Maya examined Emma carefully, checking her temperature and looking at her throat. "I think she might be getting her 2-year molars." Maya said, "It's painful and scary for children because they don't understand." "What's happening? Let me try something my grandmother used to do for teething." Maya went to the kitchen and prepared a warm chamomile tea, then soaked a clean washcloth in the cool tea. She brought it back to Emma and gently placed it on the child's inflamed gums while singing a different lullaby one her grandmother had called the Pain Away song. As Maya sang, Richard watched in amazement as Emma's cries gradually subsided. The combination of the soothing cloth and the healing melody seemed to ease not just Emma's physical discomfort, but her emotional distress as well. Within an hour, Emma was sleeping peacefully, and her fever had broken. "How did you know to do that?" Richard asked as they sat together in the quiet nursery. "My grandmother always said that every pain has a song that can heal it," Maya replied. "She learned it from her grandmother, who learned it from hers. It's knowledge that gets passed down through generations, through women who understand that sometimes the most powerful medicine comes from the heart." Richard was quiet for a long time, watching his daughter sleep. "Maya, I need to tell you something else about Catherine that I haven't shared with anyone. She didn't just leave because of the stress. She left because she was pregnant again, and she was terrified of bringing another child into what she called our broken home. She had a miscarriage 2 weeks after she moved out, and she blamed herself for not being strong enough to fix our family." Maya felt her heart break for both Richard and his estranged wife. Have you talked to her since? She calls sometimes to check on the twins, but she won't see them in person. She says she can't handle seeing how much happier they are without her. Richard's voice was full of pain. She thinks she's toxic. For them. But the truth is, we were both so caught up in our own pain that we forgot how to create joy for our children. Maya understood that this confession was Richard's way of acknowledging how much their relationship had deepened beyond employer and employee. They had become partners in healing his family, and Maya felt the weight of that responsibility. That afternoon, while the twins napped, Richard asked Maya to sit with him in the garden. "I want to call Catherine and see if she'll talk to you," Richard said, not as Emma and Ethan's nanny, but as someone who understands how to help children heal from trauma. "Would you be willing to speak with her?" Maya agreed, and that evening Catherine called Richard for the first time in 2 months. Richard put the call on speaker and introduced Maya, explaining how she had transformed the children's lives through music and cultural connection. Catherine was initially suspicious, but as Maya spoke about the power of lullabies and the importance of emotional safety, Catherine began to open up. "I can hear Emma babbling in the background," Catherine said through tears. "She sounds so happy. I remember when she used to cry all the time, and I thought it was my fault that I wasn't a good enough mother." Maya spoke gently to Catherine, sharing her own understanding of how trauma affects both children and parents. Sometimes we think protecting our children means staying away from them, but what they really need is to know that we're healing too, that we're learning how to love better. The conversation lasted 2 hours, with Catherine sharing her own childhood experiences of emotional neglect and her fears about repeating those patterns with her children. Maya listened without judgment and shared resources about trauma, healing, and the importance of cultural connection in child development. By the end of the call, Catherine had agreed to start therapy and to consider visiting the children once a week, starting with short supervised visits. Maya would be present to help facilitate the interactions and to teach Catherine some of the techniques that had been so effective with Emma and Ethan. "I don't know if I can ever forgive myself for leaving them," Catherine said as the call was ending. "Children don't need perfect parents," Maya replied. "They need parents who are willing to keep trying to heal and grow. The lullabies I sing to Emma and Ethan aren't just about helping them sleep. They're about creating a sense of safety and belonging. If you're willing to learn the songs, we can help you rebuild that connection with your children." After the call ended, Richard looked at Maya with profound gratitude. "You've given us hope, Maya. You've shown us that families can heal, that children are resilient, and that love really can overcome trauma. I don't know how. To thank you." Maya smiled, feeling the deep satisfaction that comes from meaningful work. "You don't need to thank me, Richard. This is what I was meant to do. My grandmother always said that we carry the healing songs not just for our own families, but for any family that needs them. Emma and Ethan have taught me as much as I've taught them about the power of connection and unconditional love." That night, as Maya drove home to her small apartment in East LA, she thought about how much her life had changed in the past few months. She had started this job thinking she was just going to be a nanny, but she had become something much more important, a bridge between worlds, a keeper of healing traditions, and a catalyst for family transformation. The next morning, Maya would begin the delicate work of helping Catherine reconnect with her children using the same tools that had brought peace to their daily lives: music, patience, cultural connection, and above all, unconditional love. Maya knew it wouldn't be easy, but she also knew that the ancient wisdom of her grandmother's lullabies had the power to heal even the deepest wounds. 6 months later, Maya stood in the Thompson family's backyard, watching a scene that would have been impossible to imagine. When she first started working for them, Catherine was sitting cross-legged on a blanket with Emma and Ethan. Both children cuddled against their mother as she sang a Spanish lullaby Maya had taught her. Richard sat nearby playing guitar accompaniment, a skill he had surprised everyone by learning. The weekly family therapy sessions had been challenging. At first, Catherine struggled with overwhelming guilt about abandoning her children while Richard had to confront his own patterns of emotional unavailability. But with Maya's guidance and the healing power of music, they had slowly rebuilt their connection as a family. Emma and Ethan were thriving in ways that amazed everyone who knew them. Emma had not only started talking, but was already speaking in both English and Spanish, creating adorable hybrid sentences that delighted her parents. Ethan had developed an incredible ear for music and could hum complex melodies. After hearing them just once, both children were confident, social, and emotionally regulated in ways that seemed miraculous given their traumatic start. "Maya, come join us," Catherine called out, smiling with genuine warmth. "The children want to teach you the new song we learnt in music therapy." Maya walked over to the family gathering, feeling the profound satisfaction of work well done. Catherine had returned home 3 months earlier after completing intensive trauma therapy and parenting classes. The transition hadn't been smooth. There were still difficult days when old patterns resurfaced, but the foundation of love and healing they had built together was strong enough to weather the storms. As Maya sat down beside them, Emma immediately crawled into her lap, chattering excitedly in her mixture of languages. "Maya, Maya, canta la canción de abuela," Emma said, referring to her great-grandmother's lullaby that had started their healing journey. "Which grandmother song do you want, Maya, more?" Maya asked, stroking Emma's soft curls. "The sleepy one, and the happy one, and the love one," Emma replied with the serious expression of a child making important decisions. Ethan clapped his hands and added, "All the songs, Maya, all of them." Richard and Catherine exchanged a look of pure joy mixed with gratitude. They had come so far from the broken, angry family. They had been just months earlier. The house that had once echoed with crying and shouting now filled regularly with laughter music and the sound of children playing happily. "Before we sing, let me tell you all something important," Maya said, gathering the children close. "Tomorrow is going to be my last day working here as your nanny." The announcement created a moment of shocked silence. Richard and Catherine had known this day was coming. Maya had been accepted into a graduate program in child development and family therapy with a specialization in culturally responsive healing practices. She wanted to help more families like the Thompsons while also pursuing her dream of opening a centre that combined traditional healing practices with modern therapeutic approaches. "But you can't leave," Emma said, her bottom lip starting to quiver. "You have to sing to us." Maya smiled and pulled both children closer. "I'm not really leaving, my amor. I'm going to school to learn how to help even more families, but I'll still come visit you, and your mama and papa have learned all the songs now. They can sing them just as well as I can." Catherine reached over and took Maya's hand. "Maya, you saved our family. You gave us tools we didn't even know we needed and helped us find our way back to each other. How do we ever repay something like that?" "You don't repay it," Maya said gently. "You pass it on. You teach other families about the power of patience and cultural connection. You show them that healing is possible and that children are incredibly resilient when they feel truly loved and seen. Richard cleared his throat, emotional as always, when talking about how much Maya had changed their lives. Maya, we want you to know that you'll always be family to us. Emma and Ethan's first real memories are of you teaching them about love and safety through music. We want to make sure they never lose that connection to their Mexican heritage through you. Actually, Catherine said with a mysterious smile, we have something we want to give you before you start school. Catherine disappeared into the house and returned with an official-looking envelope. Maya opened it to find a check for enough money to cover her entire graduate program plus living expenses for 2 years. We can't accept this, Maya said, tears in her eyes. It's too much. It's not nearly enough, Richard replied. You gave us our family back, Maya. You turned our house into a home and our children into confident, happy kids who know they're loved. You helped Catherine and me remember how to be partners instead of enemies. This money isn't payment, it's an investment in your dream so you can help other families the way you helped ours. Maya was overcome with emotion as she realized that this family, who had been strangers less than a year ago, had become some of the most important people in her life. They had trusted her with their deepest pain and allowed her to guide them toward healing. In return, they had supported her dreams and treated her like true family. There's one more thing, Catherine added. We want you to be Emma and Ethan's godmother officially. We want them to always have you in their lives as they grow up. Maya could barely speak through her tears as she nodded acceptance. The role of godmother in Mexican culture was sacred. It meant being responsible for a child's spiritual and cultural education for life. It meant that Maya would always be connected to Emma and Ethan, would always have a say in important decisions about their lives. As the sun began to set over Beverly Hills, the 5 of them sat together on the blanket, sharing stories and singing songs. Maya taught them a new lullaby she had learned from her great-aunt, one that talked about how love creates invisible threads connecting people across time and distance, even when we're not in the same house. Maya sang in Spanish, then translated into English. The songs we share keep our hearts connected. Nothing can break the bonds made with music and love. Emma and Ethan fell asleep in their parents' arms. As Maya finished the song, their faces were peaceful and content, surrounded by the warmth of family love that had been rebuilt through patience, understanding, and the healing power of cultural connection. Later, as Maya prepared to leave, Catherine walked her to her car. Maya, I need you to know something. Catherine said, when I left this family, I thought I was protecting my children from my own brokenness, but you showed me that. Running away from pain doesn't heal it. Working through it together does. You taught me that being vulnerable with my children doesn't make me weak. It makes me real. Maya hugged Catherine tightly. You taught me something too. You showed me that mothers don't have to be perfect. They just have to be willing to keep trying. You came back for your children even when it was scary, even when you didn't know if you could be the mother they needed. That's the bravest thing I've ever seen. As Maya drove home that evening, she thought about the incredible journey that had brought her to this moment. She had started as a nanny hired to care for 2 traumatized children and had ended up facilitating the healing of an entire family. The ancient lullabies her grandmother had taught her had proven to be more powerful than any modern intervention. They had created safety, connection, and ultimately transformation. Maya's phone buzzed with a text from her program advisor at UCLA, letting her know that her research proposal on cultural music therapy in family healing had been approved. She would spend the next 2 years studying how traditional healing practices could be integrated with modern therapeutic approaches, specifically focusing on how music and cultural connection could help families overcome trauma. 6 months later, Maya stood in front of a conference room full of social workers, therapists, and child development specialists presenting her preliminary research findings. Behind her was a large screen showing photos from her work with the Thompson family, including pictures of Emma and Ethan smiling confidently as they played and learned. Traditional lullabies and cultural songs serve multiple therapeutic functions, Maya explained to her audience. They regulate emotion through rhythm and melody. They create safety through familiar sounds. They build identity through cultural connection. And they facilitate bonding through shared experience. When we honour and incorporate families' cultural traditions into therapeutic interventions, we see dramatically improved outcomes. In the audience, Richard and Catherine sat with Emma and Ethan, now 4 years old and thriving. The twins had insisted on coming to watch Maya teach other people about singing to children, as Emma had put it. They sat quietly, colouring in books that Maya had made for them, featuring the characters from all the traditional stories she had shared. After Maya's presentation, a young social worker approached her. "I work with a family where the father is from El Salvador and the mother is from Vietnam. Their 3-year-old son has been having severe behavioural problems, and nothing we've tried is working. Do you think your approach could help them?" Maya smiled, knowing that this was exactly why she had returned to school. "Every family has healing songs in their history," Maya replied. "Sometimes we just need to help them remember how to sing." 2 years later, Maya opened the Abuela Rosa Center for Family Healing in East Los Angeles, a clinic that combined traditional therapeutic practices with culturally responsive healing approaches. The center's walls were painted with murals depicting families from various cultures. Sharing music and stories together, Maya's office was filled with instruments from around the world and shelves lined with children's books in multiple languages. On opening day, the Thompson family was among the first to visit. Emma, now 6, and Ethan, now 5, ran excitedly through the colourful space, while Richard and Catherine marvelled at how Maya had created a space that honoured both professional therapeutic standards and traditional healing wisdom. "This is what healing looks like," Catherine said as she watched Emma teach a younger child one of the Spanish songs Maya had shared with their family. Children helping children, families helping families, traditions being passed on to create more love and safety in the world. Maya stood in the centre of her new clinic, surrounded by families who had come seeking help and healing. She thought about her grandmother, who had passed away just months before the centre opened, but who had lived to see Maya graduate with honours from her program. Abuela Rosa had been so proud, knowing that the lullabies she had sung to her granddaughter would now help heal families for generations to come. As the celebration continued around her, Maya closed her eyes and whispered a prayer of gratitude in Spanish, thanking her ancestors for the wisdom they had passed down and promising to use it in service of love healing and hope for all. Families who needed it most. The ancient lullabies continued to work their magic, connecting hearts across cultures, creating safety in troubled homes and proving that sometimes the most powerful healing comes not from modern interventions, but from the timeless wisdom of love expressed through song. Maya's story was no longer just about one family transformed by a grandmother's lullaby. It had become a movement showing families everywhere that healing is possible, that cultures should be celebrated, that children are resilient, and that love truly can overcome even the deepest trauma. When it's expressed with patience, understanding, and the universal language of music. If this story touched your heart and made you believe in the power of love, compassion, and cultural healing, please subscribe to our channel and share this video with anyone who needs to remember that families can heal, that traditions matter, and that sometimes the most important work we do happens, one lullaby at a time. Together, we can spread more stories of hope, transformation, and the incredible resilience of the human heart.